Welcome to Educated STEM. I'm Kate, the founder of Educated STEM, and today we are going to continue the series that we've had on succeeding in graduate school. And this topic is the biggie. So writing your dissertation and the defense. Now, when do you start writing your dissertation? I've heard people explain that their committee won't allow them to begin writing until they have approval. And then they're expected to write a document which is meant to be huge within the matter of weeks, which is just not viable. So just to give you an example, this is my dissertation. And if I had been given permission to write this and expected to write this in a matter of weeks or months, I think it would have been a terrible experience. But my PhD supervisor was very experienced, and he gave me the advice and he had me doing what I'm going to share with you. So my suggestion for when to start writing your dissertation, and you might wonder what's the difference between a thesis and a dissertation. A master's student generally writes a thesis, a PhD student writes a dissertation. So they are different. Some people use the words interchangeably, but technically that is what it's supposed to be. So my suggestion is right at the beginning of your project, as you are learning the basics about everything, I want you to start writing your introduction. You'll be very familiar with the key papers, so you can cite things very nicely. You'll begin the referencing, so it's all just becoming very easy as you go. So, it's going to be very obvious for your introduction. My project is on DNA repair mechanisms. So introduction, what is DNA? DNA gets damaged. It can get repaired through various mechanisms. This is the mechanism that I'm focusing on. These are the proteins involved in the mechanism. Boom, boom, boom. You can start kind of figuring out what your introduction is going to look like. And as you learn about the different things, just continue to add to the introductory chapter. It doesn't need to be a stressful time. Just as you learn, pop it in, put the citation in, reference it. It's going to be great. Then as more research comes out over the period of time that you're researching, just add to it. Something amazing is found out, find the relevant area in your introduction and just add to it. It takes the stress out of it so much. And it's very easy to kind of get confused between who said that, which paper did this. So as you're reading it, it is so much easier for me to actually just write it as you go. And this is going to be really helpful if you get the opportunity to write any sort of paper in the future. Because you can then go back and you can kind of figure out which paper did which citation very quickly. So don't wait until you're given permission, just write immediately. As you begin your experiments, start writing your materials and methods. Make sure that you know where the different reagents come from, if there are certain details that you are going to need to be included. You don't want to be running around looking at what the equipment is called at the last second. So just as you start doing things, just do it. It's going to be so much more relaxing for you in order to do this. Then as you go, as you do the analysis, where do the natural chapters lay? Where can you start doing this? Is there a key point where one project ends and another thing begins, which will be an automatic chapter divider? Just do it in a relaxing way. That means that you're going to be writing, hopefully, a good quality document over years, not weeks or months. I think it's so much better to do it that way. And then when you have a complete draft, or maybe not even once, and when you have a complete draft, as you finish a section, give it to someone who you trust to read and give you their feedback. So whether that's your mentor, maybe you go to a postdoc or a lab manager before it gets to your mentor, get them to read it and What I found amazingly helpful was, again, I told you in a previous recording about my postdoc Sarah, who trained me. She read my dissertation and she wrote down obvious questions, which came to mind as she read it, and she predicted a lot of the questions that actually came up in my defense, or a viva as we call it in the UK. And that was very, very beneficial. She also gave me an amazing piece of advice, which was, if there's an area that you would prefer not to take questions on, that you're not necessarily as comfortable with, go to town in your dissertation on it. Make sure that as far as they're concerned, you know this area. There's no reason for them to question you about it later on. That would be a waste of time. So it certainly worked for me. There's one particular thing I didn't want to be asked on, and I didn't. So make sure that you know what you're comfortable with and what you aren't comfortable with, and write the document accordingly. So put it out to people that you trust, get their recommendations and their comments, and hopefully they can predict any questions you might be asked. Obviously, give them enough time to read it. A dissertation could be hundreds and hundreds of pages, so make sure that you aren't asking them to turn it around in a day or two, because that's just kind of rude, and they're not going to be able to do as good a job if you don't give them sufficient time. Make sure that you follow the specifications of the school's handbook as to what your dissertation is supposed to be like for formatting, and maybe there's an order that things are expected to happen, and the way that tables and figures and all sorts of things are displayed in here. Do it, because you do not want to go through the whole process and then get told that you need to re-edit the whole thing because the product might be good, but you didn't follow directions. And then obviously you'll be sending your dissertation off to your committee members for them to review before you then do your defense. Now, in America, that will usually be an oral presentation. So you put together an oral presentation, and then they will ask you questions later. Obviously, you will have your external examiner in the room now. So this is probably the first time that they have seen a written document from you, and maybe even seen you give an oral presentation. So the best advice I got given was, don't panic. You have literally written the book on what you're going to be examined on. So you know the stuff. You should be confident in your ability. They shouldn't have asked you to come forward and defend your research if they didn't consider that you were ready. So go in there, be confident in your ability. You know your stuff. One of the things that I would recommend is, you know the committee already, but you don't necessarily know your external examiner. So you might want to just kind of read up on their research area. So I will give you an example. One of my internal worked on a protein that was mentioned in my dissertation but wasn't really focused on, and my external worked on a protein that wasn't even involved in the processes that I was looking at, but I knew that they were probably going to ask me questions on. So I actually read around both of those areas and was able to answer questions that I didn't necessarily predict, but because it was an obvious thing for me to potentially be asked, because that was their interest area, not necessarily mine, but theirs, and I was able to then answer those questions. Know that when you have finished your questions and answers section, they will ask you to leave the room. And that is because they're going to discuss whether they're going to pass you, whether it's an automatic pass, whether you have corrections that they want you to do in your dissertation, what those corrections may be, who on your committee is going to be responsible for making sure that you have done those changes, and then they can approve your final version. whether they ask you to, write it again and maybe go through another defense. That happens infrequently, but it does happen. So just know that you'll be asked to leave the room whilst they basically discuss your success or not. But hopefully you'll be invited back into the room and you'll be told that there might be a couple of hoops that you need to jump through, but that you will eventually graduate with your PhD. Then what have you got to do next? You've got to go and do whatever it is that they've tasked you to do. Maybe I had corrections in my dissertation that they wanted something maybe written about in more detail, or there was a spelling mistake, or whatever it is. And it's no big deal. Someone I know spelled DNA, Dan, on the first page of their PhD dissertation at Oxford, and they still passed. So well done, John. It's no big deal. If you make an error, you just need to go back in and correct it. So go through the process, and then you're going to have to print off your dissertation, however many copies that you need, and then get it bound into book format. And it's pretty exciting to have your dissertation. It's a real thing. It's quite heavy. So just know that when you leave that room, you're not done. You probably have other things to do. And you're still not done even once you've handed in your dissertation, because there's going to be other documents and maybe other processes that the graduate school need you to do before you can actually graduate. So there'll probably be documents, there might be exit interviews, there might be, they might have to measure you so that you know what size gowns that you're going to have. You might decide if you want to purchase your graduate robes. If you think that you're going to go the academic route and that you might be wearing these on multiple times, then maybe you want to do that. They're very pricey, so just consider that. Alternatively, you can always rent them every time you want to wear them. So make sure that if the registrar or someone from the graduate school administration emails you, email them back promptly, because there are going to be certain things that you need to complete before you can actually graduate, including if you have any outstanding fees. There is no way you're getting that diploma if you owe the school money. So make sure that all of that is done and dusted, and you can graduate happily and move on. So there's obviously lots of books out there which will also give you advice about what to do in graduate school. I would encourage you to read A Field Guide to Graduate School, Uncovering the Hidden Curriculum by Jessica McCrory-Calarco. This isn't specifically for STEM students, but there's some really good stuff in here which you can definitely utilize as a STEM student. So please go ahead and do so. And I hope that the video series has helped. It's very exciting being in graduate school. It can be very daunting, but hopefully with the support of your peers and your mentor and your family and friends, you can get through this, and eventually you will be called Dr. Bleep, whatever your surname is. It's very exciting, and it's a huge achievement getting either a master's or a PhD. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to take an awful lot of effort, but it will be worth it eventually. So good luck. Write any comments that you have below about whether the advice was helpful. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.